Hey, welcome to Quick Take. I'm your host, Susie, along with my very great, gracious, and humble co-host, James. How are you, James?
I am all those things and more.
I know.
Well, what can I say to that?
I know you're going to be quiet now, which, well, I don't know. Maybe that will be.
That's happened
be
once.
change.
I don't even think we published that episode.
Yes.
So I think we're all right.
And you're welcome, because I brought a friend with me that you
So
just
exciting.
met, Tracy Phillips. Tracy has been working with me on my presence online and at my video productions quality, all of those things. And so we're really excited to have you here, Tracy.
Thanks. I'm super excited to be here, especially the pre conversation was amazing. So I think this is going to be just as good.
Yeah. And
I know we do that all the time where we're like, stop talking. We have to hit record.
Yeah, exactly.
This conversation's way too good already.
Yes. Yeah, because we were talking about how we have been on video for so long, and yet we still see people, executives, that don't have a great visual presence. So interesting. Don't you see that too?
I see it all the time. And again, I'm astounded sometimes because this is someone who is high up in the company. Other people are looking at them for guidance and what to do. And if they are not caring about their virtual presence, then down the line, I see also that people are just not taught they're not taught though. You don't know what you don't know. And
Sure.
You know, some of the biggest ahas are silly little things. But I think, you know, it is really important to think about your virtual presence, especially if you're the type of person you're like, it doesn't really matter. It matters.
Yeah, I think that when you talk to executives about some of the fundamentals of being an articulate speaker, talking to people and making eye contact, having a cohesive thought, just in a regular presentation style, everyone appreciates that those things are important. But when we add this element to it, it becomes that much more complicated. And so many executives haven't had the training,
right.
the peer group, perhaps, or even the mentors to say, hey, you know what, this is a critical part of being seen as a leader.
Yeah. And even as a coach for some, I'm trying to help people understand that it's that connection. It's building trust. It's being able to have difficult conversations. So I say what Tracy always tells me, look at the green light. That's the person feeling like you're looking at them, and don't look at their picture. That was the other thing. People don't realize that that's where you look to make them feel seen.
Yes. And that takes practice. So again, like everything we talk about today, especially is, you know, you don't know what you don't know. And so when you learn the thing, you have to practice the thing. I would say test it out, record yourself, and look, where was I looking? You know, I think if you're in a group setting, it's okay to kind of look around the room. But when you are the one speaking, like right now, I am looking into my dot. Why? Because the audience is on the other side of that dot.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that is really important for you being memorable and impactful. And these are all the things you want to be, especially because you're not live. You have this separation and you're in your tiny little box. Within that tiny little box, we need you to pop, we need you to show up, and we need to make an impression, a positive one. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think that at the end of the day, I think that it matters. It just comes down to that this stuff matters. And I think that's what I think we want our folks to hear, is that there is an importance to this.
Yeah.
You know, one of the great examples, and I know a few of our listeners will know who I'm talking about. We had a leader who was in Baltimore, and she cleverly had a screen background that was the BlackRock New York office, with a chair, a jacket slung over the chair, and a purse in the background. And while I knew she was in Baltimore and never in New York, there was still that feeling that she was in the office. And you would hear me say things like, have you seen so-and-so today? Or did you go by down and do this? Of course she didn't. But, and it wasn't intentionally, it wasn't a lie or trying to be a subterfuge. It was really just a fine background, but it did create a belief that she was being part of the New York team. And I think that while we can say none of these things are really that important, they do matter as a whole, and we consciously and subconsciously observe them. And I think we need to remember that.
It's a feeling, right? So the feeling for you was she is a professional in her professional setting, and you know things about that setting. And so everything and all of our decisions are first based on a feeling. And so creating that feeling in your virtual space of, I'm a professional, I should be taken seriously. Again, if you're not taking yourself seriously, then the people on the other side of that lens certainly aren't going to take you seriously. And so, yeah, there are just so many little things that you can, and they are quick fixes. But again, I'm just going to keep saying, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
And do people,
let's talk about how, go ahead, Susie.
No, I was just going to say, people don't tell you in your everyday. Like people also can notice some of these things. I've talked to people and I'm like, how did you not know that you're looking this way? I had one person say, I'm looking at you. You're right there. And I was like, no, but don't you understand? Like they're smart people.
I'm not on your other screen.
They're smart. Or I had somebody that was like this in their, really low down. And I was like, why don't people tell you to move up or look at them? And people just don't take that next step. It's not their place. They're not the expert in it. Why should I say something?
They don't think about it though. That's not like, unless you come, I have a 23-year pro video background. Right. And so it's like, people will send me little messages and they're like, oh my gosh, this person's showing up like that. Can you tell them? I'm like, no, they're not a client of mine. I can't just like go out of the blue and be like, hey, your video looks terrible.
By the way.
But I love that you mentioned the framing, because I'm going to take that as a great segue into talking about your framing, because it is probably one of the easiest things to fix and one of the most important. And we won't get into the psychology and the science behind it, but where you are in the frame. And what I mean by frame is, where are you in your little virtual box is your framing, and how close you are to the screen or far away really does dictate how people perceive you. And so a lot of stuff is perception. And so what we want is for you to be close up, because video is a close up medium. I can't remember it's a Wired magazine, and the CEO always comes and he's so far away and his audio sounds echoey. And I thought, I know they have a production team that could be helping him. I can just put his phone down.
Yeah.
But if you think about where I am now, right, I'm visible. You're looking at me. You're like, oh yes. Okay. She's well lit. I can see her. I can connect with her. But if I'm here, I'm just lost in my background, and I see it all the time. And so what you really want to do is fill the frame. And so I like to say no more than an internet inch above your head. And you do want to see some of your chest, because I could fill the frame, like this. That's no good. Nobody wants to see that. But again, so there's a couple things with the framing. Stay in the middle. It used to be in the olden days, we do like the rule of threes, where it's like you could be on the left, right? You're not. You're virtual. Stay in the middle, and then you want the internet inch above, and you want to have pockets up. So pockets up, so we see a little bit of your chest, so it's not just an immaculate floating head, and you're connecting again, and we'll go into the other important thing about your framing, and Susie mentioned it, is your eye line. So when you're trying to figure out your framing, so you're not looking up or down at the camera, my camera right now is directly in line with my eye. So when I am talking to you, and again, I'm not looking around the room at Susie or James, I am looking into my camera, talking about all of these things, because my audience is on the other side of that camera. And so those are two just very easily fixable things that can be done within a minute. And play with it, right? Play around, see where you look best.
I know. I just adjusted my camera. My internet inch was
you were had a little bit too much headroom, but again, So and then I think when we're talking about framing and standing out, and I know you didn't ask this, but we were talking about it before. And I would love everybody, if you're looking around this room at the three of us, who pops, right? Who you notice first? Probably me, because I'm wearing bright yellow. Then Susie, because she's wearing a beautiful maroon color, and then James, and he's wearing a paler color. And so what you wear online also matters. And this is where I usually tell people, stick to jewel tones. Sometimes my Jersey accent comes out. That's jewel. And so these are your blues, greens, yellows. Again, I never would wear this out in public because I don't really like yellow. However, it pops online. I do a lot of thrift shopping. I have things that I only wear online. But again, if you're presenting online,
Yeah.
a global meeting, you have a sales meeting, you want to pop, you want the attention on you. And again, other little things, and this is mostly for women, but if you are going to wear something, a nice color, you must wear white or black because that's just what you wear. Have a pop of color by your face so it's bringing everything up to your face.
See, I tend to wear muted colors because I'm just so attractive. It makes it hard for people to focus.
I feel
so. I want to give Susie
you're like
a chance.
Pop of color yourself, is what you're saying.
I'm a pop of color myself. It is just it's been a difficult burden to carry for a long time. So I feel
cue the violins.
Yeah, it's a humble brag, I'll admit. So yes, I love that. I love the color. I love the idea of having a thrift pile of clothes sitting next to the camera here that fits for the video, but not for public consumption. So yeah, that's great.
I also, when you were talking, there's a couple things from an influence perspective, because I talk about corporate politics and those kind of things. Having a color, even in a big meeting, makes you pop, even if you're not the one that's speaking. So thinking about that. And the other thing is, I'm using my hands because I always do, is people trust your hands. So having a good frame that you from time to time see your hands also is a way to communicate trust and connection.
Yes.
So there's also the idea of how can we take some of the nonverbal cues that are great and powerful in real life and use them, not inauthentically. If you're not you don't use your hands to talk, you don't want to be like, trying to, but how do you naturally communicate over video more of you?
Well, and I think I love, again, you're like the queen of transitions. That's a great segue into talking about nonverbal. And the nonverbal sometimes can be even more impactful than what is coming out of your mouth. And they've done studies, and 7% of what's memorable and what people connect to is your spoken word. What is coming out of your mouth? 7.
Wow. That's incredible.
38% is your tone of voice. And 55% is the body language. It's called the 7-38-55 rule. And so body language really is so important. I am an effusive speaker, right? I also, like you, Susie, I am energetic. I use my hands, but you don't want to be an animated bunny rabbit, or I forget, is it Grover, right? You don't want to be like moving around so much that it becomes a distraction, but you also don't want to be so stiff that you feel it's like watching a robot. And so here's a couple things that you can practice with the body language is if someone else is speaking, nod and smile. These are just nice
soft
things
smile.
To do. Well,
doesn't have to be a cheesy smile. It can just be soft.
Well,
that was a scary smile. That wasn't cheesy at all. That frightened me a little bit. But,
but I mean, these are little things, right? So I noticed, and Susie and James, you both do this so well. When I was speaking, I noticed you're both nodding, right? Yeah. Nodding, smiling. As the speaker, that makes me feel good because I'm like, okay, I'm connecting. Right. So you know that you're connecting, but it's also important because I'm being understood. Sometimes I use my eyebrows. I'll use facial expressions. I can't remember the statistic. I should have looked it up. But when you use your hands, you are perceived as smarter than someone who doesn't use their hands. And that is a funny thing. So if you're talking about the length of something, right? If you're talking about the length of something and you do this, that really connects with people. Or if you mention a number and you hold up 3, Susie was counting us in and we did the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it also is just a little bit of a reset. If you're in a longer meeting and someone's just droning on and droning on and droning on, you really how do you keep people engaged with the nonverbal? And so, again, working on your tone of voice is a lot harder. And that's where coaching comes in than simply adding arms or like a tilt, a head nod. These are things we do, from my pro production days is we did a lot of doctors on green screen type things. And they would get into their script and we'd say, every once in a while, just tilt your head. Just tilt your head while you're talking. And it's such a little teleprompter trick, but it works. And because someone tilts their head is interested or paying attention. Yeah.
Boy, I really love the energy that comes with that. I think a lot of the way that now I'm very self-conscious about my hands, of course, and I'll probably poke my own eye out. But I love the energy that I get from people when they respond non-verbally.
Yeah.
And so I tend to over index on that so they know that I am getting that. Well, they may not get the energy from it. I want them to know that that's what I want from them. Yeah. I am trying to give the positive reinforcement, if you will. And I do find that in a meeting where the energy is low, if I am getting more animated, I can bring the room up. And I can get people to nod. I can get people to do that. And it's fascinating how a leader can, with nonverbal cues, really create a different energy when you're on the Zoom.
Yeah. And I mean, like, you can even adding humor, that's more of the tone, but like adding humor, like I said, I will sometimes, if I'm teaching or I'm in a group of people and I want them to pay attention, I will actually use the camera and say, like, you may want to write this down. Right. And I make my voice lower because they will lean in to listen. Like, what did she just say? And her face is really close. But those types of things are just to keep the engagement going. Again, we really do lose a lot online, but you don't have to lose everything. Right. I think it's a lot easier to engage someone in person because they're feeling your actual energy and you're interacting with them. But what I try and do is translate that to an online space.
Yeah. You know, what's really interesting is that there's research that says that we listen the least to the people we know the best because we get so used to their what they say and their cadence and everything. So when you disrupt that with silence or you change that, and that's what made me think of it when you get close up, is it when you change that, you force people to pay attention.
Correct. You're disrupting. And that's exactly the right word. You're disrupting. And then it also, you can amplify your message that way.
Yeah.
And so again, going back to the first thing, which is it matters how you show up. Yeah. I think about when I am hired by corporate leaders, they're like, people come on and they don't even have their camera on.
Yes. I was gonna
right. And I do a lot of downline training for folks. And I'm like, turn your camera on.
Yeah.
It matters because when you're being thought of for the next promotion or project or anything, and people haven't seen you, they can't connect. You may not say a word in that meeting, but if you show up in a jewel tone, well framed, smiling, nodding, paying attention,
they notice.
Memorable. And again, remember to be memorable. Yeah.
So do you think that it's important, I've been working with a company and we've been talking about that, how it matters and just the criticality of creating a code of conduct, if you will, whether it's a specific or whether it's a documented or more of an informal one about things like that.
Yeah.
Is that something that, that you'd recommend?
A standard of procedure for showing up. I do think that's really important because if you have salespeople showing up and this is an important meeting, you want to know that they are representing you in the best way possible. So, we talked a little bit about this in the beginning, which is you don't really have control whether they show up with pants or with a messy bed in the background. So I would absolutely almost templatize that and say, here's how we expect you to show up on Zoom calls, meeting, whatever you're using for the virtual calls, so that everybody is looking their best. Yeah, because you're right.
I feel like and when I want to hold people responsible for a certain behavior or an outcome, I feel much better holding them accountable if I've made it very clear up front.
Yes.
Right. And as a leader, that's what you want to do. Like, look, we have these guidelines and here's the rules and it's all very clear here. You are not doing that. Right. It's more difficult for me to come on and say, you know what, you just weren't professional. It just didn't feel right. That's harder when I haven't given them the rules by which I'm going to measure that.
Correct. And also like professional, especially, when we're hiring a younger generation professional to them. And I laugh because I was supposed to do an interview with someone yesterday and they texted me and said, yo, Bean here, not going to be able to make it. And I thought, I've never met this person.
Yeah.
And they're yoing me. Like I immediately knew how old he was. I thought there's a level of friendship here that does not exist yet. But also that no one has probably taught this person how to communicate. And part of communication is, again, showing up and being virtual. And so I love the idea of really saying, here's our expectations. That way, if they don't meet those expectations, you have somewhere to go, because it doesn't feel good to say you're not professional, because they may think, no, I
totally am.
I had a great sales call while my cat and dog were laying on the couch, a really messy couch behind me. And again, these are distractions that a lot of people don't think about if there's stuff going on in that background, they are not paying attention to you.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is, again, I have a little pet peeve of blurred backgrounds, because I notice a lot of people do the blurred backgrounds. Well, I don't want people to see my home, or I don't want people to see this. And I understand that. However, when I see a blurred background, I think, what are you hiding? So I'm not even paying attention anymore. What do you
I do too.
Right. And sometimes they're hiding like a horrific mess. And sometimes they just don't want, it feels invasive for someone to be in their home in that way. So in that case, James, like having like, here's what we recommend, and we'll send you a, chair green screen, and here's the background, every call that you have that you put on there. If you need help setting that up, we'll have a tech person come, like help you do that. It's so easy. And that way everybody is showing up in a way that makes you feel good about the people that are representing you.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's about brand, right? For me, it's the thought that, look, we have a brand that we want to represent. We have dozens of people talking to dozens of clients, and we'd like to have a consistency in the value proposition that we bring to the table. We are charging you a premium for the quality product, and we want that to be perceived that way. And that happens in lots of things. The software we build, the representation we are on a video call, the mail that we send you, the billing, whatever it ends up being, they all should be on brand. And I think this is a big part that people aren't thinking of too.
I love that you.
All right, Susie.
Oh, sorry. I love that.
Why don't you bring us home?
You use the word perception, though, and that's the biggest thing to think about. Like you may think you're doing, it's the perception. And so when you're talking about brand, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but the perception is really, really important.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a lot of this for sure.
Before you go through I want you to give us your top tips, Tracy. And I also just wanted to add to your conversation around, I had a very senior person tell me that his people, can you tell them, don't just show up, be seen. And what you're saying is you have permission to have a conversation with your people that says, this is how you have to be seen.
Yes.
And what I keep hearing you guys say is we're afraid to, but I think it is really important to have the conversation and say, these are the things, these are the standard that we want to have. And I think that's okay to do. So Tracy, can you give us your top tips so people can really,
are we recapping where we we're doing the recap part? Okay. I'm prepared for this.
Okay.
The first one is it matters. And I think we've all said it matters how you show up in a virtual space, even if you're tired of showing up in that virtual space, even if you're a little burnt out from it, it still matters. So every time you show up, think of, how am I being perceived, regardless of whether it's an internal meeting or an external meeting. I put the effort in regardless of the meeting. The second one is really about your room, your framing, your background, your eye line. All of these things are really important and easy to fix so that you are perceived as the expert you are.
Yeah.
And then the third one is really those nonverbal cues of getting comfortable with the nodding, the looking into the camera, the listening, being an active listener. And again, if you're a hand talker, don't be afraid of using your hands. And if you're not, then try and integrate something, like a little bit of a head nod, head tilt, or just using your hands to express important moments.
I enjoy that.
So good. And share this with people that need to hear it. This is a really important episode for people to understand. And people can find you on LinkedIn.
Yes. Tracy Phillips. Yes.
Okay. Awesome. And people should watch this on YouTube because we talk about the framing and the nonverbals here. So feel free to also catch this on our YouTube channel as well. Thank you, Tracy. This has been so helpful.
So much fun. Thank you both for having me on.
Thank you. This is great. Take care.